Meghan Markle just committed what might be the most unforgivable act of her entire post-royal career. During her recent Paris escapade, she appeared to deliberately film herself driving past the Pont de l'Alma tunnel, the exact location where Princess Diana lost her life in 1997. And she didn't just pass by quietly, she documented it, posted the footage online, and made sure the world knew exactly where she was. The backlash has been swift, brutal, and completely justified. Prince William is reportedly absolutely fuming. Sources close to the palace reveal he's struggling to contain his rage over what he sees as a calculated exploitation of his mother's death. This wasn't some innocent mistake or unfortunate coincidence. Meghan knew precisely what she was doing when she positioned that camera, captured that footage, and shared it with her millions of followers. The message was clear, the symmetry deliberate, the manipulation transparent. Royal commentators are calling it ghoulish, critics are labeling it disaster tourism. Even some of Meghan's most loyal defenders are struggling to spin this one into anything resembling acceptable behavior. Because how do you justify what appears to be using the sight of your husband's mother's tragic death as a backdrop for your Paris Fashion Week content? How do you rationalize what many see as turning that tunnel into a personal photo opportunity? Insiders claim Harry has been manipulated through his mother's memory from the very beginning. Reports surfaced years ago that Meghan wore Diana's favorite perfume on their first date, a move designed to trigger his deepest emotional wounds and create an instant artificial connection. She's constantly compared herself to Diana, positioned herself as Diana's successor, and weaponized Harry's grief to control him. But this crosses every line imaginable. The timing makes it even more disturbing. Harry has spent years raging against the paparazzi, blaming them single-handedly for his mother's death, claiming the media's pursuit killed her. Yet here's his wife, voluntarily engaging with photographers in the very city where Diana died, filming herself near the tunnel, and treating the whole thing like content creation. The hypocrisy is staggering. The cruelty is breathtaking. What kind of person does this to someone they claim to love? What kind of wife drags her husband's deepest trauma into her desperate attempt at a Fashion Week comeback? Royal insiders whisper that Meghan genuinely believed this would make her look connected to Diana, that it would somehow enhance her mystique and draw comparisons between the two women. Instead, it's revealed her as someone willing to exploit a tragedy for attention, someone so consumed with her own image that she'll use her husband's dead mother as a prop. Palace sources made their position crystal clear when asked about Harry's security demands and stalker claims. Their response was brutal in its simplicity. Stay in California. The message was unmistakable. Nobody wants them back. Nobody's impressed by these stunts, and this Paris disaster just proved exactly why the royal family wants nothing to do with Meghan Markle ever again. Meghan Markle wanted Paris Fashion Week to be her grand reinvention, her triumphant return to the spotlight after months of career disasters and public humiliation. Instead, it became another masterclass in how not to behave at a high-profile event. From the moment she arrived, everything about her presence screamed desperation, from the bizarre outfit choices to the awkward social interactions that went viral for all the wrong reasons. Let's talk about that Balenciaga dress. Critics immediately dubbed it the toilet paper gown, and honestly, that description is generous. The $5,150 creation swallowed her small frame in waves of messianic fabric that made her look less like a fashion icon and more like someone playing dress-up in their mother's curtains. She was drowning in material, stumbling through Paris like a child who raided the costume closet. But the outfit was just the beginning of the disaster. Footage emerged of Meghan attempting to air-kiss the Balenciaga creative director, and the awkwardness was painful to witness. They practically crashed their faces together in a moment so uncomfortable that even casual observers could see there was zero genuine relationship there. This wasn't a designer welcoming his muse to the show. This was two strangers forced into proximity by whatever arrangement brought Meghan to that front row. Here's the thing that exposes the entire charade. The creative director doesn't even follow Meghan on Instagram. If she were truly some important figure in his creative vision, if she mattered to him at all beyond this single event, he'd be watching her every move online. Designers follow their actual muses obsessively. They engage with their work, their content, their aesthetic. But this man? Radio silence. He doesn't follow a single Meghan-related account. The relationship is purely transactional, and the world can see it. Then came the moment that revealed just how unwelcome Meghan truly was in those elite circles. Actress Kristen Scott Thomas, elegant and famously pro-monarchy, completely blanked her. Meghan tried to insert herself into a conversation Kristen was having with someone else, and the British icon simply refused to acknowledge her existence. No polite smile, no acknowledgement, nothing. Just a cold, deliberate dismissal that spoke volumes about how genuine high society views the Duchess of Montecito. Meghan's response to all of this, that bizarre facial expression she kept making throughout the event. Royal watchers called it the dislocated jaw. her mouth hanging slightly open in what she apparently believes is a sexy, sultry look. Instead, she resembled someone practicing their best Zoolander impression, while simultaneously sucking in her cheeks so hard it looked like she'd swallowed a lifesaver. It was performative, artificial, and deeply uncomfortable to witness. Sources reveal that Balenciaga paid for everything: the airfare, the hotel, the entire trip. Meghan didn't invest a single dollar of her own money into this appearance. She was essentially a hired prop, brought in for whatever publicity value she might generate. And the fashion house got exactly what they paid for: headlines, controversy, and a front-row spectacle that had nothing to do with the clothes and everything to do with the walking disaster wearing them. Medical experts are sharing their professional opinions about what royal watchers have suspected for months: that Meghan Markle may have undergone extensive cosmetic surgery, with timing that appears deliberately calculated to coincide with her recent disappearance from the public eye. Two doctors on opposite sides of the Atlantic have analyzed her publicly available before and after images, offering their expert assessments. Their conclusions are remarkably similar. According to these professionals, this wasn't subtle enhancement. This would represent a complete facial overhaul. Dr. Johnny Betteridge, based in London, didn't mince words when he examined photographs from 5 years ago compared to her recent Paris appearance. At 39, Meghan's features had a softer quality to them. Now at 44, her face looks noticeably more defined, more lifted, and paradoxically more youthful, despite the passage of time. Weight loss alone cannot account for the dramatic changes visible in her facial structure. The procedures Dr. Betteridge believes she may have had include upper and lower blepharoplasty, commonly known as eyelid surgery. Her upper eyelids appear more visible, more on display than before. The skin around her under-eye area appears to have been reduced significantly, creating a tighter, more refreshed appearance. But the apparent changes don't stop there. Dr. Betteridge believes she may have had a full face and neck lift, pointing to what he sees as alterations in her tragus and how her earlobe now attaches to her face in a different position than it did just a few years ago. Dr. Jennifer Armstrong, based in California, offered an even more detailed analysis. She noticed immediately that Meghan's eye shape has transformed from round to almond-shaped, almost squinty in recent photos. This change came from filler placed strategically underneath the eye, pushing the tissue upward and altering the entire appearance of her gaze. It's a technique that creates a more exotic, dramatic look, but one that can appear unnatural when overdone. Dr. Armstrong believes the evidence of a nose job is compelling. Meghan's nose bridge was wider in earlier photos, less defined, and the structure changed as it moved down her face. Now it appears narrow all the way down, more structured, more refined. The before and after comparison leads Dr. Armstrong to conclude that she's likely had a rhinoplasty that completely reshaped her nasal profile. Moving down the face, both doctors noted significant filler in her cheeks, creating definition that simply wasn't present in older photographs. Her lips reveal evidence of a lip lift, shortening the distance between her nose and upper lip, while also incorporating lip filler to enhance volume and show more of the pink tissue. The transformation continues all the way to her chin, which has gone from narrow and pointed to notably wider and more square-shaped. Royal expert Angela Levin didn't hesitate when asked about the surgery speculation. Of course she has, Angela stated flatly. Meghan's never admitted to any procedures, but the changes speak for themselves. She pointed to the obvious dental work, the disappearance of gaps in her teeth, and the flawless skin that replaced her earlier freckled complexion. This is a woman who will do whatever it takes to achieve the image she believes she deserves. The question everyone's asking now: was this surgical overhaul part of a desperate plan to reinvent herself before the Paris launch? Did she disappear for months specifically to recover from these procedures? Just as the internet exploded with outrage over Meghan's Diana tunnel exploitation, Prince Harry suddenly leaked a story to one of his favorite UK outlets. He claimed a female stalker had approached him not once but twice during his recent London visit when he reunited with King Charles. The timing was so suspiciously convenient that even casual observers could see through the manufactured drama. Palace sources didn't hesitate to fire back with a response so brutal it left no room for interpretation. Their message to Harry? Stay in California. Problem solved. No stalker issues if you simply remain where you are. The dismissive tone spoke volumes about how the royal family views Harry's endless security demands and his constant attempts to pressure the government into providing taxpayer-funded protection. But here's where the story gets even more interesting. The internet quickly identified who this so-called stalker actually is: a black woman who appears to be a devoted Sussex Squad member, someone who has traveled around the world following Harry to various events. She's not a dangerous threat, she's a superfan, an obsessive one. Certainly, but there's zero evidence of violence or genuine danger in her history. Royal commentators immediately pointed out the cruel irony. Harry and Meghan have actively encouraged the Sussex Squad for years, despite the vile attacks these people launch against anyone who dares criticize their idols. The The squad stalks and harasses critics online and at their homes, contacts people's employers with false allegations, makes prank calls to police to send officers to innocent people's residences, and even uses pictures of critics' children and information about their schools as weapons. Countless royal watchers have been targeted, doxxed, and threatened by these people. Angela Levin faced horrifying messages threatening rape and murder. Others have had their relatives harassed, their workplaces contacted, their personal information spread across the internet. And through it all, Harry and Meghan have said nothing. They've never once condemned the squad's behavior. They've never asked them to stop. Many believe they've actively encouraged it. So the fact that one of their own supporters is now allegedly stalking Harry, that's what some are calling toxic karma coming full circle. You encourage a mob, you weaponize obsessive fans, and eventually that obsession turns uncomfortable even for you. But many royal insiders aren't convinced this stalking situation is even real. They suspect Harry manufactured or at minimum exaggerated the entire thing for two very specific purposes. First, he's still desperate for government-funded security. He's been fighting this battle for years, trying to force the UK taxpayers to pay for his protection despite the fact that he abandoned his royal duties and moved to California. This stalker story gives him ammunition to claim he's in genuine danger whenever he returns to Britain. Second, and perhaps more importantly, he needed to distract from the horrific headlines about Meghan's Paris behavior. The Diana tunnel footage was dominating every royal news cycle, and the backlash was brutal. Suddenly dropping a stalker story shifts the narrative, makes Harry look like a victim, and gives the media something else to discuss besides his wife's ghoulish exploitation of his mother's death. Palace insiders aren't buying it, neither is the public, and the message remains clear: stay in California. Those carefully curated photos Meghan posted from her Paris trip, the ones showing her laughing with friends in the back of a car with their feet casually propped on the seats, weren't the candid friendship moments she wanted everyone to believe. Royal insiders confirm what many suspected all along: those weren't friends, they were employees, paid staff members positioned to make Meghan look popular, relatable, and socially connected. Her hairstylist Daniel was prominently featured in the shots, and he immediately jumped online afterward to gush about what a triumph Paris had been. He walked his followers through every product he used on Meghan, every technique he employed, calling it a major win. But here's the reality: Daniel is on the payroll. He's not her friend, he's her employee, contractually obligated to make her look good, both literally and figuratively. The sad truth is that Meghan Markle doesn't have real friends anymore. She has people she pays to be around her, people who depend on her financially and therefore cannot afford to tell her the truth. They can't warn her when she's about to make a fool of herself. They can't suggest that maybe driving past Diana's death tunnel and posting the footage is a monumentally bad idea. They just smile, nod, and collect their checks. What happened to all the genuine friendships? They're gone, ghosted, discarded the moment they stopped being useful. Jessica Mulroney was once considered Meghan's closest confidante, the person who stood by her through the royal wedding and the early days of her marriage. Then Jessica made one misstep, got caught in a social media controversy, and Meghan dropped her instantly. No loyalty, no second chances, no compassion for someone who had shown her nothing but support. Tyler Perry opened his home to Harry and Meghan when they first fled to California. He provided them security, shelter, and friendship during what they claimed was their darkest hour. He publicly defended them, called Meghan a princess on social media, and positioned himself as their advocate. Yet reports now suggest that relationship has cooled significantly. Once Tyler served his purpose, once they'd secured their Montecito mansion and no longer needed his generosity, the connection faded. The pattern is undeniable. Meghan uses people until they're no longer valuable to her brand, her image, or her immediate needs. Then she ghosts them completely, cutting them out of her life as if they never existed. It's happened so many times now that it can't be dismissed as coincidence or misunderstanding. It's a deliberate pattern of behavior, a calculated approach to relationships that treats human beings as disposable resources. So when you see those photos of Meghan surrounded by smiling faces in Paris, remember what you're really looking at. You're seeing paid employees doing their jobs. You're seeing people who financially cannot afford to abandon her or tell her uncomfortable truths. You're seeing the artificial construction of friendship, purchased and performed for the cameras. Real friends, the kind who challenge you and hold you accountable? Meghan Markle doesn't have those anymore. She ghosted them all years ago. Nick Eide has finally broken his silence, and his story confirms everything royal watchers have known about Meghan Markle for years. The London socialite who introduced her to high society, who opened doors she could never have accessed on her own, has now admitted publicly that she ghosted him the second he stopped being useful. And the most heartbreaking part? He's still too terrified of her to tell the complete truth. Nick was Meghan's golden ticket into London's elite circles, long before Prince Harry entered the picture. He brought her to the Global Gift Gala in 2014, where she mingled with celebrities like Lizzie Cundy and Eva Longoria. He took her clothes shopping, introduced her to modeling agents, and essentially ingratiated her into a world she desperately wanted to be part of. He made her feel special, made her feel like she belonged. They kept texting for quite a while, Nick revealed in a recent interview. Even after she started dating Harry, she was still messaging him, maintaining that connection. But then something shifted. After a while, we kind of petered off, he said, his language carefully sanitized. The reality was far more brutal than his polite phrasing suggested. She didn't gradually drift away. She cut him off completely, coldly, the moment she secured her prince. Royal expert Angela Levin had a long conversation with Nick about what really happened, and she paints a very different picture than his public statements. He was in a terrible state, Angela revealed. He was absolutely heartbroken. This wasn't just about being disappointed that a friend had moved on. Nick felt used, discarded, devastated by how completely Meghan had erased him from her life after everything he'd done for her. The contrast between his private pain and his public comments is stark. On the Royal podcast where he discussed Meghan, Nick wrapped everything up nicely, presenting their relationship as a natural evolution where people simply moved in different directions. But Angela saw through it immediately. Why would he now put it back all wrapped up nicely? She asked. The answer is simple and chilling. He's terrified of her. So many people are very terrified of her, Angela explained. They think she's powerful, that she's got money, that she has no end to how ghastly she can be. Nick witnessed firsthand what Meghan did with the Diana tunnel stunt. He knows what she's capable of. He understands that speaking the full truth about how she treated him could make him a target of the Sussex squad, could bring down harassment and threats on his head. So he sanitizes his story. He pretends it was mutual, amicable, just two people naturally drifting apart. But the heartbreak Angela described tells the real tale. Nick gave Meghan access to a world she couldn't have entered without him. He invested time, energy, and genuine care into helping her establish herself in London, and she repaid him by ghosting him completely once she landed a prince. He joins a growing list: Jessica Mulroney, Tyler Perry, Piers Morgan, and countless others who learned the hard way that Meghan Markle views people as stepping stones, not as human beings worthy of loyalty or gratitude. Meghan Markle doesn't just ghost people who displease her. She weaponizes an army of obsessive online supporters to destroy them. The Sussex Squad has become one of the most toxic, vicious groups on the internet, launching coordinated harassment campaigns against anyone who dares criticize their idol. And the evidence suggests Meghan not only knows about it, she actively encourages it. Royal commentator Angela Levin experienced the squad's brutality firsthand. They sent her horrifying messages threatening violence of the most disturbing kind. They claimed all her friends were revolting far-right extremists and Nazis. Angela is Jewish, making the Nazi accusations particularly vile and absurd. But facts don't matter to the squad. They simply deploy whatever weapons they think will cause maximum pain and intimidation. The harassment goes far beyond nasty messages on social media. Reports indicate the squad has contacted people's employers with fabricated allegations, made false reports to authorities, and published personal information online. They've even reportedly targeted critics' family members and children, crossing every ethical line imaginable in their attempts to intimidate and silence anyone who dares speak against Meghan. Austin Lee Moore, a content creator with a relatively modest following, spoke out about his own experience with the squad's attacks. He explained how Meghan hires influencers whose entire online presence revolves around worshipping her, and these paid accounts then go after other pages like attack dogs. They're bots in some cases, he explained, but there are also actual people who will come for you with coordinated harassment. The most disturbing detail Austin revealed, he claims Meghan watches the Instagram stories of the people attacking her critics. One of the squad members who came after Austin bragged publicly that Meghan had viewed his content, and according to Austin, Meghan's account was consistently one of the first to view his stories. If she's truly all about peace and finding her tranquility like she claims, Austin asked why would she be monitoring the people who are bullying others on her behalf. The answer is obvious to anyone paying attention. She's not just aware of the harassment, she's following it, tracking it, perhaps even directing it. The squad doesn't operate independently. They take their cues from Meghan and Harry, and they've never once been told to stop. Not a single statement condemning the behavior. Not one request for civility or restraint. Just silence, which the squad correctly interprets as approval. Royal watchers have documented countless cases of this abuse, yet mainstream media refuses to cover it. The narrative around Meghan remains carefully controlled. She's the victim, always the victim, perpetually under attack from racist trolls and cruel commentators. But the reality is exactly the opposite. She's the one with an army at her command, an army that terrorizes innocent people whose only crime was expressing an opinion she didn't like. And here's the sickest irony of all. This week, Meghan and Harry will accept a humanitarian award for their work combating online bullying. They're being honored for fighting the exact behavior they've spent years encouraging and weaponizing against their critics. Meghan Markle chose to make her major Fashion Week debut at Balenciaga, and that choice reveals everything you need to know about her priorities. This isn't just any fashion house. This is a brand that just 2.5 years ago faced massive backlash over an advertising campaign that critics called absolutely bald-faced in its promotion of disturbing content. The scandal rocked the fashion world. Celebrities distanced themselves. The public demanded accountability. But apparently none of that mattered to Meghan. She saw an opportunity for cameras, for attention, for her face in the front row of a major fashion show, and she took it without a second thought. Never mind that the brand's reputation remains deeply tainted. Never mind that associating herself with Balenciaga directly contradicts everything she claims to stand for. Cameras are cameras, attention is attention, and Meghan Markle will accept publicity from anyone willing to offer it. The hypocrisy becomes even more staggering when you remember that Meghan is about to accept an award for advocating against online bullying and for child safety. She's positioning herself as someone who protects vulnerable young people, someone who understands the dangers they face in the digital age, yet she willingly sat front row at a fashion show for a house that many believe crossed unforgivable lines in their advertising. Critics are asking the obvious question, how does a woman who claims to champion children's welfare align herself with a brand like Balenciaga? How does she rationalize that decision? The answer seems painfully clear. She doesn't think about it. She doesn't care about the contradiction. Her only concern is visibility, relevance, and the desperate hope that a high-end fashion house affiliation might resurrect her dying brand. Industry insiders suggest Balenciaga made a calculated gamble with Meghan. The house needed attention after their scandal, and controversy generates clicks. Meghan needed credibility in the fashion world after years of catastrophic style choices and failed brand partnerships. It was a match made in publicity hell, two damaged entities hoping they could somehow rehabilitate each other through mutual association. But the footage from the event tells a different story. Meghan looked uncomfortable, out of place, like someone who'd crashed a party they weren't actually invited to. The awkward interaction with the creative director, the cold shoulder from Kristen Scott Thomas, the bizarre facial expressions and stumbling walk, none of it suggested a woman who belonged in that environment. It suggested someone desperately pretending to belong while everyone around her saw through the performance. Sources confirm that Balenciaga paid for everything: flights, hotel, the entire trip. Meghan invested nothing of her own. She was essentially a hired attraction, brought in to generate headlines regardless of whether those headlines were positive or negative, and that's exactly what she delivered. The Paris trip dominated news cycles for days, but not for the reason she hoped. She thought she'd be praised for her fashion moment, celebrated for her return to relevance. Instead, she's being criticized for her association with a controversial brand, mocked for her outfit choices, and condemned for the Diana tunnel stunt that overshadowed everything else. Balenciaga got their publicity. Meghan got humiliation. This week, Meghan Markle and Prince Harry will stand on stage and accept a humanitarian award for their work fighting online bullying through their parenting network. Let that sink in for a moment. These two people, who have weaponized online harassment against countless critics, who have never once condemned the vicious attacks carried out by the Sussex Squad, are being honored as champions of child safety and digital wellness. The audacity is absolutely staggering. Buckingham Palace reportedly has a file documenting Meghan's bullying of royal staff members. Multiple employees came forward with complaints about her behavior, describing a toxic work environment and treatment so severe that some were left in tears. The palace took these allegations seriously enough to launch an investigation, yet the findings were never made public. But that file exists somewhere, a permanent record of Meghan's alleged cruelty toward people who worked for her. Yet here she is, accepting awards for combating bullying. The cognitive dissonance would be laughable if it weren't so insulting to actual victims of harassment. Royal commentators have pointed out that any organization willing to give these two an award for fighting online abuse clearly hasn't done even the most basic research into their history, or worse, they simply don't care about the hypocrisy, because any publicity is good publicity. This isn't the first time Harry has accepted an award he had absolutely no business receiving. Remember the Pat Tillman Award? Pat Tillman was an American hero, an NFL player who gave up fame and fortune to enlist in the military after September 11. He lost his life to friendly fire while serving his country. He sacrificed everything for a cause he believed in. Even Pat Tillman's own mother publicly stated she didn't agree with giving Harry the award. But Harry showed up anyway. He walked on stage, accepted the honor with a smile, and never once acknowledged how grotesque it was to compare his life to Pat Tillman's sacrifice. Harry quit his royal duties. He abandoned his family. He moved to California and spent years complaining about how difficult his privileged life has been. That is not heroism. That is not sacrifice. That is the exact opposite. The same pattern applies to this mental health and humanitarian award. What have Harry and Meghan actually accomplished in the fight against online bullying? They started a parenting network that appears to exist primarily in press releases. They give speeches about digital wellness while their own supporters terrorize people across the internet. They position themselves as advocates for vulnerable children while Meghan sits front row at Balenciaga shows. The awards keep coming because Harry and Meghan have mastered the art of performance activism. They say the right words. They align themselves with trendy causes. They show up looking solemn and concerned while cameras flash. But when you examine their actual behavior, their real-world impact, there's nothing there, just empty gestures, hollow statements, and a growing list of people they've hurt along the way. This award is a mockery of everyone who's genuinely working to protect children online. It's an insult to victims of bullying, and it proves that some organizations care more about celebrity attendance than actual integrity. Something shifted at Kevin Costner's charity event weeks ago, and body language experts couldn't stop talking about it. Harry was on stage having his moment when Meghan, apparently against his explicit instructions, walked out to join him. His back was to her. She tapped him on the shoulder, and when he turned around, the look on his face wasn't affection or welcome. It was something closer to shock, maybe even horror, like a man waking from a years-long nightmare and suddenly realizing where he is. That moment, combined with the Paris tunnel exploitation, has royal watchers wondering if Harry is finally reaching his breaking point. Is he finally seeing what the rest of the world has known for years, that he's been isolated, manipulated, and controlled by someone willing to weaponize his mother's death for attention? Or is this just another false hope? Another fleeting moment of clarity that will disappear as soon as Meghan reasserts control. Royal biographer Sally Bedell Smith explained that Diana was paranoid about rejection and abandonment because her mother left when she was young. Harry clearly adopted this same trauma, constantly talking about the abandonment he felt losing his mother and not having his father present the way he wanted. This psychological wound makes him uniquely vulnerable to manipulation. He's so terrified of losing Meghan the way he lost everyone else that she gets away with absolutely everything. 50% of his isolation is consequences of his own actions. Prince William doesn't talk to him anymore because Harry betrayed him publicly, sold family secrets for profit, and chose Meghan over every relationship he'd ever valued. His old friends have moved on, literally moving houses and not sending forwarding addresses to Montecito. Harry was spotted wandering around London looking hungover, ringing doorbells, trying to find people who'd made it clear they wanted nothing to do with him anymore. This is what abusers do. They isolate their victims. Meghan has systematically cut Harry off from his entire family of origin, from his reason for being, from the thing that gave his life purpose and dimension. She stripped away every support system he had until she became his entire world. And now he's trapped in Montecito, with paid employees pretending to be friends, and a wife who just drove past the tunnel where his mother died so she could film content for Instagram. Royal insiders have seen dynamics like this play out before. It can take years, sometimes decades, but eventually the isolated spouse reaches a breaking point where they simply cannot live with it anymore. They cannot abide one more day of the manipulation, the control, the exploitation. And when that moment comes, they leave. It doesn't matter if they have anywhere to go or anyone waiting for them. Nothing is better than staying. Is Harry at that point? The evidence remains unclear. That look at the Costner event suggested something cracking inside him. The Paris tunnel stunt should have been unforgivable if he has any respect left for his mother's memory. But he's still there, still standing beside her, still allowing his trauma to be used as a weapon against his own family. Until Harry finds whatever Meghan took from him, his courage, his independence, his sense of self, he remains trapped, watching helplessly as his mother becomes nothing more than a prop in his wife's endless performance.